No, I don't do my podcast from a pet store. I know it sounds like it. Um, those are just lovely birds. Some lovely, some not so lovely. But birds, bears, mountain lions, and bobcats. I'm just trying to stall time as I load this because the other thing is I have bad reception here, living up in the Altadena Hills. Okay, today's episode is going to be about turning your breakup into breakthroughs. And I just want to say you don't have to be going through a breakup to turn your breakup into breakthroughs, because we could actually turn our previous breakups that may have happened years ago, a decade ago, we could still get insight. Although I do believe that after an expired relationship, the growth soil does calcify, meaning you only have a certain amount of time before that rich soil, after the feelings and all the emotional residue and roller coaster that we're on, like after that kind of subsides and we're able to take a breath and we create some distance, and we could then look back and kind of visit the black box and see how the plane went down, right? At that time, the soil is really rich, right? And I feel like if you do it before then, the soil is not rich, because after a relationship expires, especially if it was a really powerful one, the emotions, they're just riptides, right? And they could drown you. And I don't think we don't have enough groundedness. Our lenses are very blurry. Our emotions are like the elephant. Our logic, the rider on top, and the elephant's going to go where it's going to go. And so we just kind of have to get through that and allow ourselves to feel. I don't think right after a breakup we're meant to go back and reflect and take ownership and review the crash. I think we're just meant to feel and be gentle with ourselves and just take it a day at a time, So the soil is not rich then, but once we create some distance, once we can stand and start rebuilding our lives, the soil is super rich. If we wait too long, and after an expired relationship, we are trying to find someone new, or we get into another relationship too fast, then the soil calcifies, right? Because now we are investing in something new, which any new relationship comes with new dynamics, new love tracks, new definitions. I mean, you're co-creating with someone, and then the growth, the train has left. I mean, you could still grow, you could still reflect and stuff, but I think when we co-create a relationship with someone new, it's so difficult to then go back and reflect, process, because now we're kind of on this new train, we're on this new ride. Anyway, all right, so a breakup can be a devastating experience, of course, but it could also be the greatest opportunity for personal growth. And in this audio guide today, I'll share 6 powerful ways to reframe your breakup and use it as a catalyst for transformation. And this is based on not just being a therapist and helping other people, but also I actually pull more from my own story. I actually pull more from my own experiences, because I think that's where wisdom lies. It's not in books. We can know a lot of things, but if we haven't experienced them, it's just information. I think wisdom comes from experience, not from information. Thank God, because I do not do well in school. And so, but I feel like I've lived a lot and I've been through a lot of shit. So I'm glad that my learnings have come from that and not from textbooks, because then I would have nothing to offer except a lot of C minuses and D's, a lot of poor report cards. All right. So we're going to talk about reframing the story of a breakup. We're going to talk about swimming past the swimming past the breakers. I haven't had enough coffee. We're going to talk about healing your emotional triggers. We're going to talk about breaking up with yourself. I know it sounds strange. We're going to talk about letting go of attachment, and then finally, embracing your rebirth. All right, so reframing your story, reframing the story of your breakup. The first and most important step is to reframe the story of a breakup. You need to understand that your relationship had an expiration date. I've been saying this forever. It's been so helpful for me to know that your relationship was not meant to go a day longer or end a day sooner. I get a lot of pushback because people are like, you're comparing my marriage to milk. And no, it's just a reframe. I'm not minimizing the value of the relationship or marriage. I'm just saying, if you believe that your relationship is expired, there's just a lot more acceptance there. I mean, it's been super helpful for me to see it that way than a breakup, which sounds devastating, can activate your nervous system, right? A breakup means that there was this huge, colossal event, right? The meteor hit your house. That's what it sounds like to me. An expired relationship sounds like it's a part of life, and we all go through them, you know? There's a lot of acceptance in that. Anyway, yeah, it was not meant to last forever. So write this on your bathroom mirror and read it out loud until you believe it. Too often we get caught up in the fantasy of a relationship and refuse to accept when it's time to let go. But the reality is every relationship has an endpoint. And you know, that endpoint can be when you die. So I'm not saying that relationships can't be forever in this lifetime. I'm just saying that there is an endpoint, you know. And accepting this truth is the key to moving forward. At least the first domino. Another concept is this idea of swimming past the breakers. Relationships like the ocean have turbulent breakers that we all must swim through to reach calmer waters. These breakers represent the challenges and difficulties that arise as the honeymoon phase fades and reality kicks in. The little things that start to bother us, the emotional activation, right? The differences, the contrast. These are all parts of the breakers. If we don't have the courage to swim past them, and when I say swim past them, I'm not saying ignore them. I'm saying to work through them. And working through them means processing what is coming up for you when you are activated, right? The collision of two people stirs the stuff inside, which is tied to your story and wiring and all of that. And then when that debris is stirred up, like imagine a cup of water with like sand on the bottom, and then you stir it up and sand comes up. Working through means to take what comes up and look at it and work through it. It's all information, you know. Working through or swimming past the breakers doesn't mean to wait until the debris calms down, because it will get stirred up again. And it's not about waiting for that to calm down or to settle. That is called running away. That is called refusing to work on your shit, you know. If we don't have the courage to swim past them, we will get exhausted and eventually drown, either by leaving the relationship, sabotaging it, or checking out mentally and emotionally. Okay, next concept, healing your emotional triggers. Many of our emotional reactions in relationships are tied to our past experiences and the stories we've created about ourselves. By the way, I try not to use the word trigger because I think it's one of those words that we overuse and we are not using correctly. I am guilty of this. I have been sold this word as a bumper sticker. A trigger is a clinical term where let me give you an example of a real trigger. If someone has PTSD from the war, and this is, I know this is kind of trite, but if they come back from war and they hear a helicopter, and because of the sound of the helicopter takes them back into experiences from the war, and they are triggered, they're literally having an episode or a breakdown, or physiologically, mentally, emotionally, they are having a how do I say it? Having an experience, a mental emotional collapse, right? A panic attack, perhaps. That is a trigger. We use the word trigger when we should be using the word activation, or we're activated, right? Like if we go and we see someone at the grocery store doing something that reminds us of an ex, or something that gets us, I don't know, angry or frustrated, we're not being triggered. We're being activated, right? We're not having some kind of episode or panic attack, or we're not collapsing on ourselves. We are feeling discomfort because someone is rubbing us the wrong way. That is not a trigger. That is an activation that's occurring. So anyway, healing your emotional activation, maybe not trigger. Many of our emotional reactions in relationships are tied to our past experiences and stories that we've created about ourselves. When a partner does something that reminds us of a past hurt, right? Activation comes when our wounds are not healed and people are pouring salt on those wounds. We react strongly. We don't respond, we react. This is a knee jerk. And most of the time, it has nothing to do with them. It has to do with us, our stories. To move past this, we need to do the work of understanding and healing those old wounds. I really believe as humans, we're meant to activate each other so then we can heal those pains, right? Heal those wounds. The activation acts as a black light to what needs to be worked on, to what needs to be healed, what needs to be looked at. It's like see your activation as an X-ray. You go to the doctor, you get an X-ray or an MRI or some kind of scan. Well, that's what activation can be, which is a gift, But only if you run toward, swim past, work through, not if you react. Only then can you start to love with an open heart instead of loving around your partner out of fear and uncertainty. Next one, break up with yourself. This is my favorite. At some point in the relationship, you may have ended the relationship you had with yourself, right? Like in a relationship, especially a toxic one, there might have been a point where you have drifted so far away from you that you have ended your relationship with yourself. You may have given up on your own needs and desires in order to make the relationship work. If this is the case, then it's time to break up with the version of you that sacrificed too much. Reconnect with your authentic wants, needs, desires, dreams, and make sure you're still part of that equation. A relationship can only thrive when both people are whole and fulfilled. The whole parts work stuff, I feel like in relationships, there can be a lot of us separating with ourselves. And I think parts work can be really helpful in this, in that I think there's parts of us in our relationships, especially if those relationships were unhealthy, dysfunctional, toxic, those parts of us that may have been stunted, bullied, ignored, unseen, right? And then there's other parts of us that are healthier and kind of the grown-up parts of us that needs to kind of reconnect and establish a relationship with that other part, which kind of contradicts this title, Breaking Up with Yourself, now that I think about it. What I mean by breaking up with yourself, I think, is kind of accepting and retiring that old part of you, letting go of that old part of you by reparenting that old part of it. Does that make sense? So it's almost like an integration, although it is a breaking up. Am I just making things more confusing? The wiser adult grown-up part of you is sticking up for, is reparenting, is giving the other part of you that was neglected and abused or unheard, unseen, undesired, because that part never got those things. So you can give that part those things, right? And that part can be a part of you from childhood, or that part can be a part of you 2 weeks ago when you were in that relationship. But giving that part all the things that part needed, maybe from someone else, perhaps that part didn't get, the emotional milk, the nourishment. Now you can give that part that, right? And so at the end of the day, what you're doing is you're establishing a better relationship with yourself. And it's not a one-time thing. It's I mean, like with any relationship you build, it requires time, patience, effort. There's investment. Okay, next one, letting go of attachment. One of the hardest parts of breaking up is letting go of the attachment fantasy we had about the relationship. When I say attachment in this case, I'm not talking about attachment styles. I'm talking about here's a secondary loss that we don't talk about in relationships. Is we're not only, when we're going through an expired relationship or breakup, we're not just losing the relationship, we're losing everything that could have been, right? So there's like the secondary loss. That is a form of you attaching to something, and it may not be something that exists now, but it could be, but it's something that could be. So for example, let's say you were engaged, the fall is greater because if you were engaged, chances are you have been thinking about, have been fantasizing about what the future could look like, right? Because with engagement, then it's marriage, and you're probably thinking, oh yeah, kid names and houses, and you've built up this entire future. So losing that is a real thing, But true freedom comes when we can release the attachment and embrace the unknown. This doesn't mean you have to be completely detached. It's about finding the right balance between caring and letting go. So I don't know what that looks like for you. One of the things that's really helped me, especially with secondary loss, is yes, I may have lost this future with this person that I have created in my head, but if things aren't going well and things aren't fixable and people have drifted, that future not only does it not exist, but at this state and condition of the relationship, that's not the future I want. You know what I'm saying? Like if you play out the relationship that ended, if you actually play it out 5 years from now, 3 years from now, is that future what you wanted with the state and condition of this relationship? And probably no. I mean, that future is probably more of a trap. It probably feels more like a coffin, it's something you don't want, right? The future that we create is usually with the fantasy of the relationship we see as healthy and, quote unquote perfect, although there's no perfect relationship. When the relationship is not good, the future also will not be good. All right, finally, embracing the rebirth. Understand that a breakup is not the end, but the beginning of a profound rebirth. And when you're in it, when you're in the trenches, it's so hard to see that. I've gone through many expired relationships. And every time, it's different. And I don't look at it, or I haven't looked at it as a rebirth and something empowering when I'm in it, because because I'm sad, because I'm lonely, because I don't know. And I don't know when I'm going to meet another person, or I'm going to be alone for the rest of my life, right? So all this doubt and hopelessness, um, when you're feeling that, it's really hard to be positive and say, oh, there's a rebirth on the other side of this. It's not until you've gotten some traction that you look back and connect some dots and say, oh, if that didn't happen, then I wouldn't be who I am today. That requires a journey. And I get it. If you're in the trenches, it's going to be hard for you to swallow that. But I'm telling you, as someone who has been through many expired relationships, I'm sure you've heard this from other people. I'm so glad that ended, because I wouldn't be who I am today, right? It threw me on a journey that was required for me to establish a better relationship with myself and show up in a way today that I wouldn't have if it wasn't for that event. Be patient with yourself through this process, and know that it's a journey, and that one day you'll look back and see how the breakup was the catalyst to your transformation. Embrace uncertainty and allow yourself to be reborn. Thank you for listening. Be well.